The world watches transfixed as the tensions escalate between Iran, Israel, and now the United States. It's a global drama, and amidst the anxiety, a profound question begins to pierce through the noise. Is divine protection once again shielding Israel? This isn't just a recent thought. Throughout history, ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, launched 4 distinct attempts to dismantle Israel, and each time, a higher power intervened. God didn't just defend his chosen people, he meticulously recorded his promise to shield them again in the future. But this brings us to an even more critical, often avoided inquiry. Does Israel still hold its sacred covenant with God? This video aims to cut through the noise, to reveal a truth many shy away from. Who truly are the people of Israel today? And are they still divinely chosen? The historical record is clear. God's hand has consistently protected Israel from Persian threats. The first intervention even predates the Persian Empire itself. Long before Israel's enslavement, God named the very Persian king who would orchestrate their freedom. Later, a sinister plot to annihilate the Jewish people within Persia was foiled by divine intervention. And Daniel, God's prophet, was miraculously saved from the lion's den in what is now Iran. Yet a fourth, monumental intervention remains unfulfilled. It's foretold in the prophetic books, destined for the end times. A powerful coalition, led by the dominant force in the Iranian territory, will march with the intent to destroy Israel. This will be the ultimate attempt, met with the ultimate divine response. God promises to defend his people with fire, earthquakes, and an outpouring of glory. To grasp the magnitude of what lies ahead, we must first journey back. Let's explore these 4 pivotal biblical moments, for they hold the key to understanding the future that is now unfolding before our eyes. Imagine a time cloaked in the shadows of the future, a full century and a half before Jerusalem would crumble, before its sacred temple was engulfed in flames and its people dragged into chains. Even then, an extraordinary decree was etched into the fabric of time. God, the Lord of hosts, was already naming the very man who would shatter the chains of oppression and redraw the map of history. And who was this chosen instrument? Not a scion of David's line, no prophet of Israel, but a foreign monarch, a Persian king. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus. Isaiah 45:1. Think of the astonishment. God's anointed, a title reserved for his chosen leaders, for kings of his own people, bestowed upon a man born in the heart of what we now call Iran, an empire yet to flex its might. Why would the God of Israel choose a pagan ruler from a distant land to fulfill his most crucial decree? Because, as history has repeatedly shown, the Almighty is bound by no human convention. His purposes transcend our understanding, using even those who do not know him to sculpt the narrative of eternity. The prophecy was an undeniable truth. Israel's liberator would emerge from Persia. And so it came to pass. The year 597 BC witnessed the agonizing siege of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, the formidable king of Babylon. For 18 brutal months, the city clung to life, only to succumb to starvation and despair. The proud walls yielded, Babylonian hordes swept in, and the holy city was obliterated. Solomon's magnificent temple, a symbol of divine presence, became a raging inferno, its sacred treasures plundered and hauled away to Babylon. Zedekiah, the last king of Judah, a desperate shadow in the night, attempted escape, only to be captured near Jericho. His punishment was a tableau of horror. Forced to watch the execution of his sons, then blinded, led away in chains, a stark, sightless monument to the end of Judah's reign. Thus began the 70-year exile, a prolonged agony for thousands of Jews deported to a foreign land. They languished in Babylon, surrounded by alien temples, strange tongues, and pagan customs. Their pain was not merely physical or cultural. It was a deep spiritual wound. The temple was gone, the priesthood silenced, Had God truly forsaken them? Each new generation born in Babylon felt the ache of being further from Jerusalem, further from the promised land, further from the divine covenant. Yet even as his people mourned in their Babylonian captivity, God's master plan was unfolding far to the east, beyond the Euphrates, where a nascent power was stirring: Persia, a people forged in resilience, discipline, and a fierce strategic prowess. They were rising from the shadows of mightier empires, and among them a child was growing, destined to alter the course of empires. His name was Cyrus. Born of Persian royalty, Cambyses I, and Median lineage, Mandana. Cyrus was groomed from his youth in the arts of statecraft and conquest. As he came of age, his ambition knew no bounds. He subdued northern tribes, conquered the gold-rich kingdom of Lydia, and then set his sights on the grandest prize, Babylon itself. But Babylon's fall was no conventional war. It was a calculated humiliation. Cyrus's Persian engineers deftly diverted the mighty Euphrates, allowing his troops to march through the riverbed's channels directly into the city. Babylon, the seemingly impregnable empire that had enslaved Israel, crumbled in a single night, without a single wall breached, without a pitched battle. Isaiah's prophecy, whispered centuries before, was now thundering reality. And then, the unthinkable. Cyrus, the new emperor of the world, a man who never set foot in Jerusalem and worshipped other gods, issued an unprecedented decree of freedom. He declared the Jews free to return to Jerusalem, to rebuild their sacred temple, and to worship their God. More than that, he returned the very sacred objects plundered from the temple and provided gold, silver, and timber for its restoration. Why such an act of mercy from a pagan king? Ezra 1 reveals it. Cyrus acted because he recognized the God of heaven had laid this mission upon him. The prevailing belief is that the aged prophet Daniel, still a respected figure in the Persian court, presented Cyrus with Isaiah's ancient scrolls. To read his own name, prophesied a century before his birth, must have revealed to Cyrus that his reign was no accident, but a divinely appointed purpose. Though not converting to Judaism, he humbly submitted to a will far greater than his own. And so, the Exodus began anew. Thousands of Jews embarked on the long march back to their homeland. The elders wept at the sight of the temple's new foundations, while the younger generation, born in exile, struggled to comprehend Jerusalem, yet felt an undeniable pull back to their origins. Worship was rekindled, faith bloomed once more, and the story of Israel, seemingly brought to a crushing end, was miraculously reborn. All thanks to a decree signed by a king who never even saw the temple he helped restore. Cyrus was not a devotee, but an unwitting servant. God sought not allegiance, but fulfillment, and through him, his ancient promise was brought to pass. Our journey through history brings us to a young man ripped from his homeland and thrust into the heart of Babylon during its initial conquests. Daniel, a mere boy, yet even amidst the opulence and paganism of Nebuchadnezzar's court, he stood unyielding. He defied the royal delicacies, clinging fiercely to his identity, and God, in turn, elevated him. As the decades turned, Daniel transformed from a captive youth into an indispensable figure, a trusted advisor at the very core of the era's most formidable empire. He possessed an uncanny ability to unravel the king's most bewildering dreams, to decode sealed enigmas, and miraculously, to navigate the treacherous currents of court intrigue, surviving purges and betrayals. But Daniel was more than a statesman. He was a seer, a prophet who foresaw the collapse of empires, even before they shuddered. Consider the infamous night chronicled in chapter 5 of his own book, Babylon's final arrogant gasp. King Belshazzar, grandson of the mighty Nebuchadnezzar, hosted a lavish banquet for 1,000 nobles. In a breathtaking display of hubris, he commanded the sacred vessels plundered from Jerusalem's temple to be brought forth. Wine flowed from these holy goblets as he toasted his pagan gods of gold, silver, and bronze, mocking the God of Israel. And then the air thickened. An unseen hand materialized, inscribing fiery, cryptic words upon the palace wall. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. The feast froze. Terror seized the revelers. The king's wise men were utterly baffled. Only one man could be summoned. Daniel, brought before the trembling monarch. Daniel, his voice unwavering, devoid of human fear, pronounced the chilling verdict. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, swift and absolute judgment descended. Cyrus's forces, by diverting the Euphrates, flowed unseen through the city's underbelly. There was no grand battle, no frontal assault. Babylon, the seemingly invincible empire that had crushed God's people, simply dissolved into the night, its king murdered in his own palace. Daniel had seen it, spoken it, and it was fulfilled with chilling precision. Babylon vanished, and Persia ascended to dominate the world stage. Yet, Daniel's story was far from over. In fact, his most defining chapter was just beginning. When Cyrus assumed control, he entrusted the governance of Babylon to Darius the Mede. Darius, recognizing Daniel's unparalleled wisdom, elevated him to one of the 3 chief governors of the realm. This meteoric rise, however, kindled the fires of envy among the other palace officials. They seethed with hatred for Daniel's unwavering integrity. They knew they could find no fault or corruption in him, but they also knew his one unshakable habit, his devotion to his God. So, they devised a cunning trap. They persuaded the king to sign a decree. For 30 days, no one could pray to any god or man except the king himself, under penalty of death. Daniel heard the edict, but he did not waver. He did not hide. He chose to die praying rather than live in silence. As was his custom, he opened his windows toward Jerusalem and knelt in prayer. The conspirators, lurking in the shadows, pounced, swiftly denouncing Daniel to the king. Darius was shattered. He labored until nightfall, desperately seeking a loophole, a way to save his faithful servant. But the law of the Medes and Persians was immutable. With a heart torn asunder, Darius issued the grim command: Daniel was to be thrown into the lion's den. But before the stone sealed the entrance, the king uttered words that echo through millennia. May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. And that night, as the hungry roars pierced the darkness, God shielded his prophet. When the famished lions circled Daniel, an angel descended, silencing their savage jaws. The terrifying roars faded. At dawn, Darius rushed to the den, his soul held captive by dread. He cried out, his voice hoarse with despair, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? From the depths, a vibrant voice responded, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. Darius fell to his knees. The stone was removed, and Daniel emerged, miraculously, without a single scratch. Transformed by the divine spectacle, the king not only restored Daniel, but enacted swift justice. The treacherous men who had plotted Daniel's downfall were cast into the very same den, along with their families. This time, the lions pounced instantly, devouring them before their bodies even touched the ground. Profoundly impacted, King Darius issued a new universal decree. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed, his dominion will never end. Thus, a king of the Persian Empire publicly proclaimed the glory of the God of Israel. But Persia was not only the empire that freed the Jews, it was also the stage where their very existence was almost extinguished. Decades had passed since Babylon's fall, and while many Jews had returned to Jerusalem, a vast diaspora remained scattered across the sprawling Persian Empire. These families, having adapted to new customs and laws, thrived in their adopted cities, yet their very integration made them acutely vulnerable. It was within this seemingly settled existence that one of the most perilous and miraculous chapters in Jewish history unfolded: the epic tale of Esther. The grand stage for this drama was Susa, the glittering capital of the Persian Empire, under the reign of King Ahasuerus, historically known as Xerxes I. In a twist of royal fate, Queen Vashti was deposed, setting in motion a kingdom-wide search for a new queen. Among the empire's most beautiful young women was Esther, a Jewish orphan, secretly raised by her cousin Mordecai. Her Jewish identity was a closely guarded secret. Quiet, wise, and obedient, Esther possessed no royal lineage, yet she was God's chosen instrument. Brought to the palace, she underwent the lengthy preparations, and when finally presented to the king, an unexpected love blossomed. And the king loved Esther more than all the other women, and he put the royal crown on her head. An unknown Jewish girl ascended to become Queen of Persia, the heart of ancient Iran. But beneath the surface of royal splendor, a dangerous figure was ascending: Haman, a direct descendant of the Amalekites, Israel's ancient, bitter foes. His hatred flared when Mordecai, Esther's cousin, refused to bow to him. Haman's malice wasn't content with punishing just one man. He conceived a monstrous plot to utterly annihilate every single Jewish soul throughout the vast empire. He cunningly manipulated the king, secured the royal signet ring, and issued a decree sealed with the full force of imperial authority. On a specified date, all Jews, men, women, and children, from India to Ethiopia, were to be slaughtered and their property confiscated. This was more than a punishment. It was the first systematic, legalized genocide against God's people, stamped with the seal of the Persian throne. Persia, the very empire that had once been their protector, now threatened to become their executioner. The doom seemed absolute. The Jews had no escape, no army, no defense. Their only flickering hope lay hidden within the palace walls. When Mordecai learned of the horrifying decree, he sent a desperate, urgent message to Esther. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. It was a piercing call to courage, a divine summons to recognize that her presence in that very place was no accident. And Esther, embracing the terrifying weight of her calling, decided to risk everything. She entered the king's presence unsummoned, a move that could mean instant death. But Ahasuerus extended his scepter, sparing her life. Then, in a tense banquet where silence hung heavy, Esther unveiled the terrifying truth. She was Jewish, and her people, her very own family, were slated for extermination by Haman's vile plot. The king's reaction was swift and furious. Deceived and enraged, he ordered Haman to be hanged on the very gallows Haman had prepared for Mordecai. But the divine intervention didn't stop there. The king then issued a counter-decree, granting the Jews the right to defend themselves on the day of the attack. What was meant to be a horrific massacre transformed into a glorious victory. The people of God were miraculously preserved by the brave actions of one woman, strategically placed by Providence at the precise moment. And once more, God used Persia, Iran, not as their ultimate destroyer, but as the intricate stage for his divine purpose. Even when the gravest danger emerged from within, God had already positioned his instruments, and though his people resided in a foreign land, in what we now call Iran, God protected the people of Israel. Yet, not all connections between Iran and biblical history lie buried in the past. There is another, more profound link, a future event, clearly etched in one of the most enigmatic prophetic books of all Scripture. Our journey through history now propels us into the realm of the prophetic, to a chilling vision received by Ezekiel during the darkest hours of Israel's exile. Hope seemed buried beneath the ashes of Jerusalem, its temple a memory, the promised land a distant dream. Yet amidst this despair, God unveiled something far more unsettling than the past, a revelation of the future, a solemn warning echoing across millennia, reaching into the very end times. This prophecy points directly to the rise of a dominant power in the region of Iran. Ezekiel, gripped by the vision, gazed upon a terrifying spectacle, a vast military coalition, spearheaded by a mysterious figure known as Gog, Prince of Magog. Allied with him stood a formidable force: Persia, modern-day Iran, Kush, Put, and other nations from the north. Their singular, ominous purpose? The utter destruction of Israel. This alliance, an unstoppable torrent, would sweep across the land like a raging storm, countless armies marching relentlessly towards Jerusalem. What made this vision even more alarming was Israel's apparent vulnerability, living in a deceptive peace without protective walls. But just as annihilation seemed certain, God's decisive intervention would erupt. On that day, when Gog comes against the land of Israel, my wrath will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. The divine response would be cataclysmic. Earthquakes would shatter the earth. Fire and brimstone would rain from the heavens, sowing chaos and utter confusion among the invaders. Gog, Persia, and their allies would be crushed, not by human might, but by the raw, unyielding power of God's own glory. Allied with him stood a formidable force: Persia, modern-day Iran, Kush, Put, and other nations from the north. Their singular, ominous purpose? The utter destruction of Israel. This alliance, an unstoppable torrent, would sweep across the land like a raging storm, countless armies marching relentlessly towards Jerusalem. What made this vision even more alarming was Israel's apparent vulnerability, living in a deceptive peace without protective walls. But just as annihilation seems certain, God's decisive intervention would erupt. On that day when Gog comes against the land of Israel, my wrath will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. The divine response would be cataclysmic. Earthquakes would shatter the earth. Fire and brimstone would rain from the heavens, sowing chaos and utter confusion among the invaders. Gog, Persia, and their allies would be crushed, not by human might, but by the raw, unyielding power of God's own glory. What Ezekiel witnessed was no mere allegory or a warning for his contemporary age. This was a vivid, concrete vision of an event yet to unfold, a prophecy that many scholars contend still awaits its ultimate fulfillment. As we survey the contemporary landscape of the Middle East, observing Iran and its allies relentlessly escalating their hostility toward Israel, a chilling question emerges. Are we witnessing the opening acts of this ancient prophesied war? Are these the first trembling steps of Gog and Magog? Yet an even more pressing question demands an answer. If Israel were no longer God's chosen people, why would he protect them? Why this elaborate prophecy? Who would God defend if his covenant with them had truly ended? The answer to this transforms everything. For if this prophecy retains its meaning, then it powerfully affirms that Israel remains, unequivocally, God's chosen people. Today, this question echoes with an unprecedented intensity, splintering opinions and fostering fervent debate within the Christian world. Some voices declare that Israel, in its historical rejection of the Messiah, forfeited its privileged standing. Others contend that the Church has now inherited the mantle, becoming the true people of God. But what does the immutable word of the Bible truly proclaim on this pivotal matter? Has God truly abandoned Israel? Or does a divine blueprint for this ancient nation still exist? To unravel this profound mystery, we must rewind to the Genesis, to the original covenant. God's choice of Israel was sealed through an eternal pact with Abraham. In Genesis 12, the divine mandate was unequivocal. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. This sacred agreement, later reaffirmed as perpetual with Abraham's entire lineage, transcended a mere promise. It was a binding, eternal alliance, defining Israel's unique identity and its singular mission to be God's light to the world. Then came the pivotal moment. Jesus, the promised Messiah, stepped onto the stage, born directly into Israel, fulfilling centuries of prophecy and longing. Yet, as the Apostle John sorrowfully records, he came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. Israel's painful collective rejection of Jesus initiated a fracture, a profound break, yet one that was critically temporary. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, clarifies this intricate divine strategy. Did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. Romans 11:11. The eternal covenant was not shattered. It was rather momentarily paused, a suspension, but never an annulment. Despite Israel's momentary blindness to Jesus, God never rescinded his covenant or revoked his timeless promises. Being the chosen people carried an immense burden, to be the very embodiment of God's light and revelation to all nations. This election was never based on merit, but solely on God's sovereign will. So, who then are God's people today? The scriptures draw a vital distinction between physical Israel, Abraham's biological descendants, and spiritual Israel, those who, whether Jew or Gentile, have placed their faith in Christ. As Galatians succinctly puts it, "And if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to promise." Galatians 3:29. Christ didn't erase Jewish identity. He elevated it, expanded it, grafted it into a grander design. He tore down the dividing wall, forging a single, unified people, the body of Christ. To illuminate this profound truth, Paul uses the striking imagery of the olive tree in Romans 11. Israel is the original tree. Some of its natural branches, due to unbelief, were broken off. In their place, wild olive shoots, believing Gentiles, were grafted in. Yet the root, the very essence of God's covenant, remains unchanged. Paul issues a stern warning to grafted-in Gentiles. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, although a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. Romans 11:17-21. This underscores a crucial point. True belonging to God's people isn't about bloodline alone, but about a vibrant, living faith in Jesus. But here lies the most breathtaking revelation. God still harbors a specific, unfolding plan for Israel as a nation. The Bible's declaration is unmistakable. This plan has not withered with time, nor has it been invalidated by their initial rejection of the Messiah. Romans 11 unveils this profound mystery. For if their rejection means the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from the dead? And climactically, and in this way all Israel will be saved. Romans 11 verse 15-26. Not a portion, but all Israel. This future promise resonates perfectly with one of the most astonishing visions in the entire Old Testament, Ezekiel's haunting depiction of the Valley of Dry Bones in Ezekiel 37. Our journey through biblical prophecy culminates in a vision both stark and exhilarating. Ezekiel's chilling encounter in the Valley of Dry Bones, Ezekiel 37. Close your eyes and picture it. A vast, silent expanse, stretching endlessly, littered with countless human bones, bleached by the sun, stripped of all life. It's a landscape of absolute despair, a grim monument to forgotten tragedy. Yet into this scene of desolation, God brings the prophet, posing a question that pierces the very core of hopelessness. Son of man, can these bones live? The logical human answer is a resounding no. What is dead forever. But Ezekiel, recognizing the voice of the Almighty, humbly replies, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. Then the impossible command, prophesy to these bones and say to them, Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Ezekiel obeys, and as the words leave his lips, an eerie rattling begins. Bones stir, vibrate, then begin to knit together, sinews forming, flesh appearing, skin stretching taut over newly formed bodies. A vast multitude of human forms, perfectly shaped, yet utterly lifeless. The transformation is miraculous, but incomplete. Again the Lord speaks, firm and decisive. Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of Man, and say to it, Come, breath from the four winds, and breathe into these slain, that they may live. Ezekiel obeys once more, and from the four corners of the heavens, a mighty wind sweeps into the valley. It is the very breath of God, the life-giving Spirit. The bodies stir, then one by one rise to their feet, an immense, vibrant army, resurrected from death. Here, the vision's profound meaning is revealed. God explains, Son of Man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone, we are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, This is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. This was not a mere symbolic tale. It was a clear, prophetic message for Israel, a people scattered, exiled, seemingly forgotten in spiritual and physical graves across the globe for generations. But God proclaims His unwavering promise. Israel will return to its land, reclaim its identity, and experience a total restoration, not only physical and political, but most crucially, spiritual. The partial fulfillment of this vision unfolded before our very eyes on May 14, 1948, when, against all historical odds, Israel was miraculously reborn as a sovereign nation after almost 2 millennia of dispersion. Like those bones reassembling, Jews flocked back from every corner of the planet, fulfilling the prophecy step by step. The nation's physical restoration is a testament to God's faithfulness. Yet the deepest part of this prophecy, the spiritual restoration, where they finally embrace Jesus, the Messiah they once rejected, still awaits its glorious culmination. This future awakening was also foreshadowed by Jesus' poignant parable of the prodigal son. Though the son squandered his inheritance and fell into ruin, the father's love never wavered. His return was met with open arms and joyful celebration. So it is with Israel to God. Despite their historical wandering, their eventual return will ignite heavenly rejoicing. And the Bible foretells an even more emotionally charged moment: Israel's ultimate recognition of Jesus as their Messiah. Zechariah prophesies, They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child. Zechariah 12, verse 10. This describes a future, widespread spiritual conversion in Israel, a profound moment when the veil will be lifted, and the eyes of Israel will behold Jesus not as a stranger, but as their long-awaited Redeemer. The escalating conflicts in the Middle East today reverberate powerfully with these ancient prophecies. The simmering tensions between Israel and Iran, the omnipresent threats of destruction, the shifting political alliances, and the surging wars are not merely geopolitical tremors. Many biblical scholars believe these events are meticulously setting the stage for the final act of end-time prophecies. Every conflict, every alliance, every decree seems to fall into a prophetic pattern that is rapidly accelerating. Many ask, could these current events truly be the prelude to the ultimate fulfillment of these biblical predictions? So, to the central question, is Israel still God's chosen people? The answer is an unequivocal yes. The covenant made with Abraham stands unbroken. God has neither abandoned his people nor rescinded the eternal pact he forged with them. Israel's story hasn't ended. It's simply paused, awaiting its most glorious chapter, which has already been written. However, even for Israel, the chosen people, access to God is granted through one path alone: Jesus Christ. While they remain divinely chosen, salvation is not an exclusive birthright. It is extended solely to those, both Jew and Gentile, who place their faith in Christ. The cross of Christ is the singular, non-negotiable path to salvation. There are no exceptions, no alternative routes, not even for the people of Israel. Salvation isn't inherited, it's believed. The Bible's declaration is crystal clear, and there is salvation in no one else, for for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. Acts 4:12. Herein lies the glorious mystery of God's divine plan. Israel has not been replaced, it has been preserved. Its history has not concluded, it awaits its most triumphant chapter. And when the appointed time arrives, when the full number of Gentiles has entered and the nations have been shaken to their core, then all Israel will be saved, not by ethnicity, not by merit, but by grace, by faith, through the very Christ who was once pierced, and who in his perfect timing will be fully recognized. And if you've ever wondered about the pervasive hatred and endless conflict plaguing this region for centuries, why the Middle East seems perpetually at war, the answer traces back to an ancient family feud, the conflict between two brothers, Isaac and Ishmael. One received the covenant, the other was blessed but set apart. Isaac became the patriarch of the Jewish people, while Ishmael became the patriarch of the Muslims. To truly grasp the deep-seated animosity between the Arab world and the people of Israel, you need to watch this linked video. Why are Jews and Arabs always at war? What began as a dispute between two women in a desert tent would ultimately divide the entire world for millennia. But the Bible not only recounts the origins of this conflict, it also reveals how it will ultimately end. Stay with us for this powerful revelation of the biblical roots of the Jewish-Muslim conflict. And don't forget to like this video. Blessings to you and your family.